Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary. I was 11 when this came out, and back then I thought it was the first time in video game history that a game was being remade. I wasn't aware that it had been happening since, well, longer than I've even existed. But Combat Evolved Anniversary did something that was quite unique for a remaster to have. Even now, it's still something that you don't really see that often. It allowed you to switch between the original and the new graphics by pressing the back button. With it being a 360 game, it did fade to black for a couple of seconds while it loaded in the new graphics, but back then this absolutely blew my mind. When the Master Chief Collection came out just a few years later, they did actually improve that feature so that the switch was instant. But yeah, when this game came out, I took the day off school. I had to fake cough or fake, being sick to my parents so they would let me have the day off. Looking back on it, it was probably incredibly obvious, like, oh, I'm too sick to go to school today, mum. Also, the new Halo game's coming out today. I was wondering if you could go and pick that up for me. But this was a special moment because Combat Evolved was the first video game that I ever played, and I know at the time when the anniversary came out, I wasn't exactly grown up, but I had been playing the original since I was 4. It was my favourite game in the series, and seeing something like this happen was special. I still have the old glitch tutorial videos that I made back when I was, I think, 7 or 8.
Today, I'm doing a free gun glitch on Halo 1, the first level. Just follow me until you get to the point I say.
Now, when I play Combat Evolved these days, I still play the Master Chief Collection version, but I always play through it with the original visuals. Even back then, when I was a kid, the novelty wore off very quickly, and there was just something about them that I didn't enjoy as much as the originals. While I think the upgraded visuals are very nice to look at, there's a couple reasons why I don't use them, and that's what we're going to talk about today. The main reason for me is that the new look of the game fails to capture the atmosphere of certain levels. Take 343 Guilty Spark, for example. The level description for that level is creep through a swamp to meet the only enemy the Covenant fear. That swamp is dark, full of fog, it's creepy. The first time that you actually get to see a glimpse of that new enemy is when you see one of them in the distance, but it runs off before you get a proper view of it. In the remaster, the swamp looks beautiful, don't get me wrong, but it's so bright that it doesn't have that same mysterious feel to it. As you're walking through the rooms later on in the mission, you see the weird yellow substance dripping down, the dead Covenant bodies with a ridiculous amount of blood, a distressed Marine that shoots at you if you get too close. It all builds up to this room where Chief opens up the door and a dead Marine falls into his arms. He picks up the helmet cam and you get to see a squad of Marines walk through the same swamp that you just walked through, the same buildings that you just went through. And when they get to the room that you're in right now watching the recording, they get attacked by the new enemy. It creates this really tense moment just before they break in through the doors. At first you're thinking, this ain't so bad, these guys ain't that tough, but then you remember what you saw earlier. This is the enemy that the Covenant fear, the Flood. Remember earlier when I said that I've been playing this game since I was 4? Yeah, this level gave me nightmares. It just doesn't have the same feel in the remaster. All the rooms are too bright, there isn't as much blood around. Small details that make a big difference in the grand scheme of things. It still looks really nice, of course, but the mission doesn't have the same creepy feel in my opinion. The same thing goes for the library, and you know what? You could say the original was only so dark because of the time it released. Hardware limitations, lighting technology improving in video games over the decade. I don't know, I'm not a game developer. But even if it is some sort of technical reason like that, it doesn't change how I feel about it at all. But on other levels though, like the Silent Cartographer, I don't really have any complaints. It looks incredible. Another problem that I have with the new graphics is that they don't fully line up with the old ones. Now, I don't think there's a solution to this. I could be wrong, but when you're playing the old game with its old visuals, let's say you're at a wall or a rock or something, when you apply the new visuals, it basically lays a coat of paint over the old visuals. Now, if in the old visuals that rock or the wall extends a little bit further out than the new version of the rock or the wall, when you shoot, you're going to hit an invisible barrier. If you go back to the old graphics, you'll find out that you just shot a wall because they don't line up one to one. And again, I don't know if there's a solution to that. I don't think they could, sort of make it exact, the exact same proportions in the new visuals. But it just means that when you're playing on that version, especially on Legendary, where you probably will be hiding behind cover, unless you're a speedrunner, but we're not talking about speedrunning here, we're talking about first-time players or playing normally. If you're hiding behind cover, that might happen quite often. Now, there is a couple of new additions to the campaign. You can find terminals and skulls, but only in the remastered graphics, otherwise they wouldn't show up. They alter the gameplay and change certain things around. Some of them make it harder for you to play by getting rid of checkpoints, for example. Others make grunts explode with confetti if you get a headshot. Finding a terminal will play a short video that reveals a bit of Halo backstory. Overall, the campaign side of the game was good. The graphics looked fantastic, but I just preferred using the old ones. The multiplayer, however, I was thoroughly disappointed with this even when it came out, because it was not what I wanted at all. All I wanted was to play the original Combat Evolved multiplayer maps online with other people. What they actually did was they remade a couple Combat Evolved maps in Halo Reach and called it a day. Thankfully, when the Master Chief Collection came out, my dream of playing these maps with other people came true. But when you go on the multiplayer in this, it just takes you to a limited version of Halo Reach, and by limited I mean you only have access to the Combat Evolved Anniversary playlist. Now you can access those same playlists in Halo Reach as well, and that's why I was disappointed with it, because it wasn't its own thing, it was just Halo Reach DLC. That meant that there was no Combat Evolved Magnum in it, because you have to use the Reach weapons. They at least changed it so that it only took 3 headshots to kill, like the Combat Evolved Magnum, but it's too iconic not to include it. I mean, they added it as a separate weapon in Halo 5 because it's that iconic. At least they took the Reach armor abilities out of these playlists, which is something to be happy about. Because the multiplayer was literally just Halo Reach, it meant that you could use your Halo Reach Spartan and armor customization as well. Look, I love Reach's customization, it's my favourite in the series, but I just wanted the true Combat Evolved colour-changing experience. Thank you, MCC. You know, I love the Master Chief Collection so much. Clearly their primary focus for this anniversary was the campaign, and it makes sense, but I was hoping we'd get the classic multiplayer on top of it. I suppose looking back on it, the most obvious reason why they did that, or 2 obvious reasons why they did that, is 1, to promote Halo Reach, which was the latest Halo release at the time. But not just that though, they were probably already working on the Master Chief Collection and thought, well, you know, we can't really have 2 Combat Evolved multiplayers running at the same time, and they probably just sacked it off and thought, okay, we'll add the classic multiplayer in that, it will make the most sense. Overall, despite the problems that I had with this game when I was 11 or 12, when did it come out? 2000... Oh, it would have been 2011, so I was 12. I still spent probably about 100 hours in this game. These days, there's really not that much of a reason to play it, because the Master Chief Collection exists on Xbox One and Series X PC, which is not only a better version of this, but it also comes with the other Halo games as well. I guess the only reason to go back to it is to play the Combat Evolved playlists, but I don't even think you can do that now. Didn't they get shut down recently? Any footage that I've shown in this video was recorded last year, because I actually did make this video last year, but it was very cringy and just very scripted, and I just thought I would do it again. So all my footage when it comes to multiplayer and all that is from last year before it shut down. But I am just disappointed, you know, because last year was this game's 10th anniversary, so I don't know why they didn't come out with a Combat Evolved anniversary. Missed opportunity there. Also, you know what I don't like? Why is Combat Evolved here? Because I read this as Combat Evolved Halo Anniversary. It doesn't look right. It just, why not put that under the... Anyway, thank you for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. Definitely subscribe if you're new here, and I will see you all in my next video.